Indigenous leaders in New Brunswick are calling for an Indigenous-led public inquiry into systemic racism in policing and the justice system.
So it's necessary, when justice is not being served to our Indigenous people, to people in general, all New Brunswickers.
The renewed call for the inquiry came following the long-awaited coroner's inquest into the death of Angel Moore of the Tlaoquiot First Nation in British Columbia. The jurors of the inquest found Moore's death was homicide. Martha Martin, Moore's mother, was overwhelmed.
You hear every detail leading up to the death of your child, and you hear to the very last moment that her breath was taken. It was like having your heart ripped out twice. It was like having your child taken away twice.
Moore, 26 years old, was shot 4 times by Edmundston, New Brunswick Constable Jeremy Sun during a wellness check on June 2020. Sun said Moore approached him with a knife. The 5 jurors' recommendations included more police training. Martin is doubtful.
I say enough is enough. It is time for our government politicians to start doing those actions and stop doing the recommendations, because recommendations, they're clearly not working.
On December 16th, the New Brunswick Commissioner on Systemic Racism released a report with 86 recommendations, including a task force to dismantle systemic racism in policing. But the report did not recommend an Indigenous-led public inquiry. In Unama'ki, also known as Cape Breton, a family says systemic racism contributed to the death of their loved one. Bridget Ann Denny, 65 years old, of the Eskazoni First Nation, unexpectedly died while in care at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital on January 20th, 2021. Mary I. Jo Francis, Denny's daughter-in-law, says,
I question myself all the time. What if there was a non-Native person in there? Would they have, would they have answered the buzzer? Would they have ran? You question this stuff because we're First Nation people. We live with racism every day. And it's in the back of your mind. You just wonder, what if?
Denny's body was cremated, and days before the funeral, the family found out from another patient Denny had fallen in the middle of the night.
But if we had known she had fallen, that all this stuff was wrong with her the night before, we would have wanted an autopsy. The medical examiner wasn't even made aware of her death because it was just kind of like brushed off.
Judy Sark, Denny's friend and fellow patient, describes the night she called for help from her hospital bed.
I keep on pressing that beep, beep, beep sound, and then when I pressed it, nobody came and helped her. And I kept on saying, help! Somebody fell down. I had to because she was my friend.
An investigation by Nova Scotia Health found inadequate care and a lack of documentation by nursing staff. The family is exploring legal action. Systemic racism is inhibiting treaty rights, according to the Senate Committee on Fisheries and Oceans report released last June, recommending the government address systemic racism in the Department of Fisheries and the RCMP. Senator Dan Christmas didn't mince words.
So the ugly reality of racism in Nova Scotia and elsewhere is quite evident and undeniable. So we strongly recommend that, that the government consider doing more public education.
Meanwhile, Mi'kmaq fishermen facing charges for violating the Fisheries Act say they have a constitutional right to harvest lobster to earn a moderate livelihood. Matt Cope of the Millbrook First Nation hopes his treaty rights will prevail.
I was 14 years old when the Donald Marshall Jr. decision was made. It's been 20-something years now. I'm 36 years old. If I keep waiting, I won't get to experience my rights in my lifetime.
James Nevin of the Sabaganagati First Nation says fishery charges are a waste of time.
It sucks, really. It's a shame that we got to do this. But like I said, they're trying to back us into a corner for like the past 30 years, right?
Sherman Cremo of the Eskasoni First Nation remains determined.
We have to fight for our rights. Like everyone's fighting down up in Saunaville, and we have our own fight up down here, and so.
Mike Sutherland, who is non-Indigenous, disagrees with the tree fishery.
You know, basically, eventually we're going to have nothing here. You know, and these boats aren't even from here. They're from down the lake. So they're taking the food from the other people and make a living at it here. Government's got to get off their arse and start doing something.
Cremo says most people are supportive.
Some won't like us, but the other people, they support us in every possible way, and they're nice people here.
I will follow these stories and more in the coming year. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.